I recall doing a presentation. I started off by asking who in the room has heard of ayahuasca. This is researchers, doctors. Only one person put her hand up, and then she quickly kind of looked around and lowered it. No one else was even aware that this was out in the world and what was the potential.
I'm amazed by this intelligence of this medicine that you can sit in the same ceremony, listen to the same music, drink the same medicine that was coming from the same place, and everybody will have a completely different experience tailored specifically to their whatever they need in this moment.
It was a really big, deep dive into my own consciousness. It felt like the medicine was reorganizing my nervous system. I felt these patterns within myself being released, but once that release happened, I felt that I could remember things I've always known but had forgotten.
These sacred plants are very powerful tools and they can be used to harm and to heal. Hello and welcome back to our podcast, Ayahuasca Avatars. And today I'm just so happy to have my sister here, Allison Feduccia, and she is the visionary behind Psychedelic Support. That probably lots of you know this website, and it's just a treasure trove of just good content and training and just interesting things and research and all of that. So I wanted to make this happen for such a long time because I really love to know people's stories, behind the scenes. But Alli is a little bit, she likes to be in the background. So I know that it's a big honor that you are here today. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's start with just if you want to share a little bit about your background, where you come from, and how did plant medicine came into your life, and how did your life change next to that, thanks to that experience?
Sure. I grew up in Louisiana, and my path to psychedelics has been a long journey, which started when I was quite young. I was 15 when I had my first LSD experience, and it really turned out to be an incredible point in my life that was both traumatic and revealing and inspiring and painful. I had a kind of classic psychedelic freak out and ended up in the hospital as a 15-year-old. I got a lot of trouble with my parents and school, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, but it launched me into a lot of questioning around how can a single substance shift our consciousness in such profound ways that revealed to me that what I was learning in my Catholic upbringing and around my society and the norms in our culture in Louisiana, that there was just so much more that we can't necessarily describe, or ways of interacting with our innermost selves or the universe at large. It just rocked my world in that way of questioning what else was out there to discover. After that experience, I was very cautious, as you can imagine, about any type of substances for many years. But eventually, I did connect with ayahuasca in 2012, I believe it was. I took a journey to Peru and sat in a Shipibo traditional ceremony at a retreat. At the time, I didn't know a ton about ayahuasca. I had heard from some friends about some experiences they had, and I was researching at the time MDMA, which is sometimes known as ecstasy outside of medical context. It's now being researched as an adjunct for psychotherapy for treating mental health conditions, including PTSD. But this was way back in 2004 that I began researching it as part of a doctoral program, MDMA, looking at the neurobiological effects. So I had this curiosity and an understanding of these compounds, but I kind of pictured ayahuasca in the cultural context of shamanism or traditional lineages as something that was just very exotic. Had read some books, perhaps. I had this, I think one or two friends that had the experiences back then. So I was very curious, and I decided I was in between a I was going to be starting a postdoc at the National Institutes of Health, and I had a month in between finishing up another job before I was going to be moving to Washington, D.C. to take this postdoc. So I scheduled a trip to Peru, and I let my friend know about, and they said, you should go to this retreat center, Temple of the Way of the Light. So I reached out, and they were booked for many months. So I asked, if there's an opening, let me know. And I just went ahead and planned my trip to Peru without the really seeking out the ayahuasca experiences in a big way. After I had planned, I bought my plane ticket, I had everything planned. I get a call a few months later from the retreat center, and they said they had a spot opening. And it just so happened to be the day after I had already booked the flight. So I had time to get there without changing anything. So I felt like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm going to go and I'm going to see what this is all about. And so I went and it completely changed my life.
Wow. Let's just pause for a moment here. I love hearing these stories. And, like when you say yes to that calling that people are familiar with the Mother Ayahuasca, how, the universe just sets in motion and you have these like synchronicities and these just everything just appears in the perfect timing. And you are really feel that you guided to the medicine, and I know that it might sound weird for people who didn't have this experience. This is a little insider thing, and it's just how it's I didn't understand it before either. So this is a common theme in all the stories and all the journeys, how we ended up there and and what happened. And so many people have these stories that, oh, the medicine changed my life. And I know that it is true because this happened to me as well. But can you kind of pinpoint more practical, exact things? What do you mean, when you say my life was changed completely? Like, this is how it was before, this is what happened after, so people can imagine, in a better way what kind of change we are talking about here.
Sure. So the retreat I went to was 7 ceremonies in 12 days, which is an incredible amount of medicine to drink and to undergo what can be at times really challenging or very profound experiences. I don't think I would ever do that much, that many ceremonies and sync that way. So in that way, just to kind of set the preface here, it was a really big deep dive into my own consciousness. It felt like the medicine was reorganizing my nervous system. I felt these patterns within myself being released, but once that release happened, I felt that I could remember things I've always known but had forgotten, and ultimate truths about my life's purpose, about the universe, about how to be in relationship with others, my family, my community, nature. I had some profound visionary states of ultimately this revealing, I think, of consciousness and in the truth behind our true meaning and purpose here on earth. So that shifted my perspective in a big way, having been involved in biomedical research and trying to understand how substances work in the brain. I'm a neuropharmacologist, and I was very heavily involved in that, and as well as for addiction recovery. Once I had those experiences, I could see that this path with plant medicines and the traditional way of working with them in this context of group settings with music, which I'd love to talk more about that too, and the Icaros and the sound vibrations and the container that's created at these ceremonies, how potent and powerful that could be for anyone who is struggling with addiction or mental health conditions, and whether or not ayahuasca is helpful in the sense that it's a spiritual awakening or can unpack some of the psychological reasons that underlie mental health conditions like addiction disorders, or is it actually doing something on a physiological level that helps to release cravings or release rumination or looping thoughts that are common during depressive symptoms. But what I think is going on is that it's all of these things. It's all of these things. And that's why, compared to even other psychedelics, I find it to be one of the most powerful and long-lasting experiences of all of the potential things that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm always amazed, even up till this day, after more than a decade. Like, it's funny, like I was also in Peru in 2012 for my first dieta. So it's I think that was a big year, for many people. Anyway, side note that I'm amazed by this intelligence of this medicine that you can sit in the same ceremony, listen to the same music, drink the same medicine that was coming from the same place, and everybody will have a completely different experience tailored specifically to their whatever they need in this moment, in that moment. And that kind of intelligence like is so far from even to comprehend how does that work, let alone replicate it some kind of pure form, which is does the opposite, which is the uniformity. You give the same pill and everybody has the same effect, right? And then you can measure and all that. So it's like a completely different ball game here. And I think that's for me one of the mind-blowing characteristics of this medicine and this intelligence, that we are talking about. So you mentioned earlier what is the true meaning and purpose, or purpose and true meaning here on earth. Like, did you get like any more information about that, or what did you learn about this from the medicine in general, not necessarily your particular purpose?
Yeah, so it comes up for me when you ask this question is I think what it really showed me was that we are all safe here, and that love is the predominant thing in the universe, that we are here to experience love and give love, and that the challenges that come up in life are part of our learning experience, and that as we experience pain or shame or discomfort or challenges, that those are necessary parts to be able to wholly appreciate joy and love and euphoria and all the things that I think we want to be experiencing all the time. But that dichotomy is necessary for us to appreciate one for the other. So this idea that grief and love are one, or pain and happiness are one, and you can't really have an experience as a human without both. And ultimately, I sense that we come to Earth to kind of have some sort of journey play out, and that along the way, we are taking in information for our souls or spirits, something on a deeper level. And, this is out of the realm of my scientific understanding, and working with plants has really helped me to embrace that dichotomy of science and spirit. And just because we can't measure something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And in fact, just like we have five senses that our human body is attuned to, that there are other ways to sense and experience things, and particularly with plant medicines, can open that door much faster than perhaps like a lifelong meditation practice or yoga practice, which I do both of those too, and have a great respect for those as modalities to access the same level of deeper awareness.
Yeah, I so resonate with what you're sharing. So, like they say that plant medicine kind of activates the right brain, and that's what we kind of need to come back into that state of balance, because we are very like society, and we in the West are very West side dominated, and I think that there is something in it, definitely. So, how did your values and priorities changed after this experience? And you were set on a career path, I guess, and did that, I guess it turned out, something different. So how your work changed and what you're doing today, and how was that informed by this experience? And also if you want to share a little bit about like relationships, because I think that's what most people want to know about.
Sure. So after that initial retreat I did in Peru in 2012, I went to Washington, D.C. directly after that and started working at the National Institutes of Health, specifically on alcohol use disorder trials within the clinical building there. Is a big hospital. There's no windows. It felt very much that the tools and the medicines we were looking at did not not even compare to, we're trying to drive in on one receptor, and maybe this would disrupt cravings if we block ghrelin, which is responsible for hunger, inducing hunger and those feelings. It just seemed very too rigid and not looking at the whole self and the whole person. So the insights I had from those ayahuasca journeys is that, why people in our society often turn to substances is to, feel connected to others, the isolation that often comes with our modern society, the work, religious practices, and all these things that most people don't feel so connected to that in our modern day age, doesn't speak to them in their life circumstances. And that's a generalization, but all in all, it just felt that giving somebody a medication to disrupt addiction, why aren't we looking at something that's more holistic, like plant medicines? And there is anecdotal evidence, even in 2012, about ibogaine or iboga is the plant that substance is derived from, or ayahuasca. And I recall doing a presentation as part of the department we were a department looking at alcohol use disorders. So I had already been studying MDMA before, and so I did a talk about that. But the second half, I added some slides about ayahuasca, and I started off by asking, who in the room has heard of ayahuasca? It was a room of a couple hundred people, and this is researchers, doctors at a very forward-looking medical foundation of the government here in the United States. And only one person put her hand up, and then she quickly kind of looked around and lowered it after realizing that no one else was even aware that this was out in the world and what was the potential. And when I look at that now, it's been 10 years. I think there's a lot more awareness around this from media coverage and research. The door has been blown open. But at that time, I think there was a lot of skepticism about what I was saying. There's these traditions in the Amazon that have these plant brews that can open people's consciousness. And, a lot of people just had heard about the LSD trials in the 50s. And there's kind of like some, like, what is that? But I don't think there was much interest at the time. And there was a few comments about, Johns Hopkins University, which was right down 45 minutes away, they started doing psilocybin research, and perhaps it piqued some interest at that time. But now it's a totally different time and place. So as far as a career path, I kind of knew that I wanted to devote my time and my energy into something that had helped me personally with mental health and my well-being and finding deeper meaning and purpose in my own life. That's where I wanted to put my time into, as far as research and potentially helping others to connect with this path if that felt like the right journey for them.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right. So, how did this whole venture came about that you envisioned? It was like your vision that came to you. It was a collaboration. It was something that organically evolved, or you just downloaded this? Like how did this came about?
I'm sorry, what was the beginning of that question? How did what come about?
Or psychedelic support, that you shifting out from, that
Yeah.
trajectory, like.
Yeah. So fast forward some years, I ended up completing that postdoc at NIH, and I had met my now husband, and we took a bit of a journey together, traveling for a few months, and we landed back in Austin, Texas, which is where I had been before doing a graduate program at UT. And so we're there, and I'm trying to kind of figure out what's next for me. And I thought I might want to do more educational work or start researching psychedelics again. But as this time, again, it's 2013, there's very limited opportunities to do so. And I was kind of saddened in that I hadn't connected. I didn't know, like, ayahuasca just wasn't really really available. I hadn't heard of different underground ceremonies happening in the US, or to go to another country to do so hadn't been in my plans. But I ended up connecting with ayahuasca, and I sat in one ceremony. And here again was sort of this divine guidance, or this divine calling, or the door open for me. And that the whole thing, the whole download that night was about, you really need to go research this. Like, whatever else you're doing, this education, that's not really that important. You need to get back in the research right now. You've done all this training, like go research ayahuasca or psychedelics. And so I met that call. With the next week, I looked up, I'd been aware of MAPS and following them. So I contacted someone at MAPS, one of the trial leaders there, and they said, well, we don't really have any positions right now, but you have an interesting background. And if you want to do some volunteer work for us, we would welcome you to do so. And so I started doing volunteer work for them. And within a very short amount of time, they said, look, if you want to come to Santa Cruz, we have an internship here. We don't have much money, but if you want to come, you could come and work on these trials and help us with our education for the therapist training program. Because I had a background doing some modules and things like that too. So I said, okay, I'm coming. I packed up my whole life, and we moved here with our two dogs. I wasn't married yet, but my husband now and I moved here, and that shifted everything for me. So I was heavily involved in the MDMA studies for 5 years, also working on different aspects of MAPS clinical development programs, their education, their resources. And I was lucky enough to connect with a community here locally that has a ongoing practice with ayahuasca, and to really be able to go deeper with this path of listening to plants. And through that, it became a lot less, I think, like personal, like this personal healing had helped me a lot of like kind of work through things from my earlier life, that I kind of started to feel more that it was guiding me to do different, or guiding me on a path that was most inspiring to me. And I've learned to acknowledge that, and really look deeply at when I feel that I'm being, hey, this would be an interesting project, or maybe you should look at this or this. I was very much inspired by what was coming through on these journeys. And so even at MAPS, we had some side projects about ayahuasca, trying to potentially look at, we ended up doing a survey on people that went down to Peru that had PTSD, to understand what the potential risk or benefits were. But during this process too, I felt that it all was inspired by this ayahuasca work to help people connect with providers that can offer integration, that have some experience and knowledge about psychedelic experiences, particularly when they're challenging and difficult. We know some individuals will have psychotic breaks after psychedelic experiences. So while I was kind of pushing this research ahead, I felt that, hey, I had this experience when I was 15, and I had no one, and I didn't share that experience with anyone for many, many years. And there should be more resources out there to connect with practitioners. And so my husband, Sean, and I, and some others worked together to launch this platform, Psychedelic Support, as a directory of licensed health providers and community group that were open-minded enough to say they were willing to work with individuals that had these experiences. And so again, this was back in 2017. It was still rather stigmatized, I would say. Could be a career killer for some, or a big risk to put your name out there as being affiliated or associated with psychedelic. And so we felt that the directory helped to build comfort for others and build security for the professionals to kind of band together and say, this isn't anything we're doing wrong. People are having these experiences. We want to help them either through risk and harm reduction before, or to help them integrate these experiences after. And it can, really unravel a lot of past traumas, present day challenges, psychological addiction disorders. All these things can be revealed in a huge way during plant medicine or other psychedelic experiences. And to have a, therapist to work with is a huge asset and very much needed for a lot of people. So that was how we got started with it, and it has been, a big calling and a big response on our part. And, to be honest, I go through phases with this project of like, oh, why did I do this? And then, but most of the time I can come back to it is a resource that's found by a lot of individuals. We've expanded it to offer a lot of articles and courses and training programs, including yours, Nina. And I just really find a lot of connectedness to others and to what I can do for my own personal growth by putting this out there into the world. So it continues to inspire me and feed me and help me to push into new boundaries and myself to offer this resource to others out there.
Thank you so much for, this service, because I think, well, there is not another website I know about that provides, the type of service within the psychedelic space, and yours is very up to date, it's very fresh and very, very good quality content and offerings, and very safe as well, with a lot of integrity. And I think, that's one of the big challenge and also responsibility that we're going to talk more about, when we are talking about plant medicine. So yeah, but I know that for you personally, as a path of service, it's probably a roller coaster and it has its own challenges. Like, do you have anything that you need from the public right now, people who are listening to this podcast, that how, if people want to contribute, if people want to help, and give back to this movement, to the medicine stuff, like, is there anything that you are looking for or passionate about right now?
Right. So the whole idea behind psychedelic support was to be a platform for those that have knowledge, services, gifts to be able to share. We never intended it to be like, oh, we have all the answers and here, let us show you the way. We really embrace this idea of an interdisciplinary approach, and that by giving a platform to others for their courses, their programs, their articles, their therapeutic services or community services, that we're all going to be stronger together, and that each individual may gravitate towards different practitioners for different reasons. And I find that the articles and the courses can help show someone more about that practitioner, can help you get a better sense of, is this the right fit? And that's always important when you're seeking a therapist or coach. It's even more important, more critical, if you are going to be trusting this person with what came up for you in psychedelic experiences, and even more so if you're going to be going on a journey with someone. And, we've tried to kind of keep the site all above in the legal frameworks of where we are in present day. And so it's not that the platform is geared towards underground practitioners, underground services, but nonetheless, we want to keep everyone informed with free courses, information, and guidance on if you're going to embark on psychedelic experiences, to make sure you understand set and setting, that you have good support, whether that's from a community or from a practitioner, that you know what the risk factors are, if you're on certain medications or have other diagnosis. You have to be really careful, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. So we want to reiterate that for anyone who is considering this as a path for themselves.
Yes, and we're gonna talk more, why this is so crucial. And yeah, I wish, I would have this resource, before I went into my first dieta, because yeah, the naivete resulted in a lot of unnecessary suffering. So it is a great service, that people have this portal now, that even before they go into an experience, like, they can get a lot of understanding and information and support, as you said. So you mentioned a couple of times, that your life changed so much thanks to working with the plants. And, a result of that was also like changing the trajectory of your career and creating this portal and this offering. So can you talk a little bit more about, like, in what way, especially for you, like the Mother Ayahuasca impacted your life, and how helped you to heal your relationship and the things that you were struggling with, so people can understand a little bit, what we are saying, that, okay, my life really changed and I feel so much better now, what does that mean?
Sure. From from those experiences, when I look back, it helped me to really get off the train of just unbound consumerism, or thinking of how to construct a life where, the goal was to have the next car or the house or the trip or the next big experience, and to just slow down and look within. So I started a yoga practice. From there, it led me into more mindfulness and meditation type practices, qigong, some of these ancient technologies that have become more popular, even without the plant medicine path. But for me, those are a way to keep it going after the experiences, and to find this deeper, slower, quiet, more connected path. And I live in Santa Cruz, which is an amazing place of natural beauty. There's redwood forests here. There's biotic zones where unique geographies of land and animals and insects and plants all come together. We're right here on the Monterey Bay, which is on the Pacific coast. So there's otters and sea life. And what it's allowed for me is just more connection to the world around me, and dropping into more subtle energies. I think energies is the right word to describe it, that I think we distract ourselves away from as humans in our society these days. There's phones, there's news, there's social media, there's all types of ways to distract from what is here in the present and the here and now. So that aspect of just sort of the cultural upbringings around cultural and religious, for in my part, to look, so that piece was very healing for me, of kind of seeing the world from a different viewpoint, in a different way of knowing. I think that we're all are feeling the sense that there's a deeper current that's running, that we're not necessarily just in control, and that it's you make a decision and B happens. So trusting this flow of consciousness or guidance, or being more open to that. And to me, that really comes through in nature, or sitting more quietly in meditation or yoga or walking. That's more mindful walking. That has been a big part of the integration process for me. And I find that I don't sit with plant medicine so much, and that I try to, I find that spacing it out a lot more, and working in the here and now with some of these other tools that we've been talking about has been the most revealing to me. And dream work and other ways that we can shift our focused consciousness from like working or distraction, or feeding our sensory needs of eating those types of things, to the more expansive states that we can experience as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that a lot of times, like, the most people struggle with like depression, anxiety. I think this is very, very connected to what you're talking about, like the stress of life, just being overwhelmed, being disconnected, being ungrounded, being isolated. That is very stressful. So that creates a lot of stress and anxiety and fear when you are in that state of disconnection or separation. That is the opposite what you were describing. And I think most people lives in that state, because I know I lived in that state for a long time, and then the other one is that lack of purpose and meaning, or trying to fulfill somebody else's purpose and meaning, not yours. Like that, I think that's very connected to depression. What's the point? That's not what I'm here for, kind of way. So, I think that, like, plant medicine, like, one of the big power of plant medicine is that it helps people to reconnect, with themselves, with the earth, with everything, with nature, with like to get that sense of connectedness, and then also to see things from a different perspective, as you said, like see what is important, what is not so important, from that vantage point, and that shifts your reality in a big way. And for most people, that's putting them on their path, and that, that's why I'm here for that. I understand now, and of course I'm gonna choose that. So and the result of that is like inner peace and confidence and trusting the process. And I think that when people say I want healing, that's what they are looking for, really, right? That inner peace, that trust, that confidence, the clarity, the sense purpose, the sense of meaning, the sense of connectedness, that I'm part of this like beautiful tapestry is what most people are looking for. And we are very much lacking, especially in the Western society. Like do you resonate with this?
Oh, absolutely. I conceptualize it as what is pulling me towards it and what am I pushing against when I can really surrender to what is the pull and what am I gravitating towards now? That is where this path continues to lead me. So when I'm trying too hard, it's not working, there's challenges, I'm not happy, others around me aren't happy, then I realize like that may need to be left or set aside. And having that clarity of where is that inspiration, what am I excited to get up out of bed for in the morning? If I can identify those things, then I find that it just flowers, it blossoms, whatever it is, and not to say that there's not difficulties that come up, but it just makes everything feel like you're in the flow.
So true. Yes. Yes to the flow.
Yeah.
Yes to knowing yourself. So as you mentioned earlier, 12 years ago, it was very little information and interest compared to today. Just even this one decade is like it's crazy what went down in 10 years, and now people not even knowing what is psychedelics or integration, and now they are, coming to me and they are like, oh, I'm looking for an integration therapist for after my retreat. And I'm like, wow, very well prepared. So definitely a lot of positive things happened as well. And you are one of the wayshowers and the pioneers, that they are carving, this new path. So what do you feel is kind of the biggest gift and the biggest challenges are of this like psychedelic renaissance and this sudden like explosion of availability, legalization, of course, as well, and just people being more open, to try new things?
I think it's necessary and needed for us to evolve as humans, to have new perspectives on the world, to look deeply at where we are spending our time and our dollars and what we are creating in our own personal lives, because that's just going to ripple out to the larger collective. So that to me is a gift, that there's more awareness around these as potential tools. And I don't think it's the only path to this necessary evolution of the human species that's coming if we're going to survive on this planet. But with that, the downfalls and the limitations are far and wide as well. And if we think about ayahuasca and other plant medicines, such as peyote, the risk of further damaging indigenous cultures that have been, holding these practices and this knowledge for so many thousands of years, the sustainability of the plants, the sustainability of these cultures is a big risk, because we've seen this in the past when Western societies get their grasp set on something, that it can be very detrimental to other people that lack power and lack resources and funding to combat the potential evil influences. I say evil because it is, just a mode that Western society is known to get into, of capitalism, consumerism, and then placing these frameworks onto plants and other people is really problematic. And so, as much of a gift it is that people become aware that these can be tools and utilized, that's a fine line to walk of how do we do this in a sustainable and mindful way. And I've been involved in the research that's paving a way towards access in the United States, potentially from FDA approval of medicines that are psychedelics. Some that are furthest along include psilocybin, which is derived from magic mushrooms, as we know. And while I see this as a potential access point, and those that are really struggling with mental health conditions or have chronic physical ailments, supplements. Working with doctors and therapists could be a good path for individuals. It seems in my mind that most people, though, will gravitate more towards community-based models, to the ceremony and spiritual aspects that have traditionally been prominent in South American traditions that use ayahuasca and plant medicines, or iboga in South Africa. There's many examples of this. So that community aspect is a big part of why I see continuation of someone that feels called to continue with psychedelics. And cost effectiveness is part of that as well. It's going to be very expensive to do psychedelics with in this medical model. There's also a lot of questions around how do doctors know, and therapists, with like what type of training would they need to do to really be able to hold these containers for individuals. It seems like a hard fit into our current model of medicalization for health conditions. And so all of these different, for me, it seems important to pursue all of these different paths, whether that's community models, church-based models. We already in the United States have 2 churches that have religious exemption for ayahuasca, community models that are being, or regulated models that are being offered now in Oregon and Colorado. This seems the way that could potentially limit some of the downsides of making sure that we're not over harvesting, that the plants can be sustainably grown, that we're not encroaching on other cultures and traditions, but on the same time, not so restricted to synthetic compounds offered by pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical companies in a medical model that will have other limitations and downfalls as far as what we just talked about, cost and ongoing support and care of a community.
Yeah, definitely. I see, these 2 paths kind of diverging more and more. One of them is the top-down legislation, and putting a legal framework and trying to force this into the Western medical system. And the other one is more like that grassroots, that comes out from the people who are actually working with the medicine and have, experiences longer term. And yeah, I think both is developing, but I don't really see them merge or cross at any point, because what I noticed that one of my main kind of complaint is that the people who are doing the legislations, like most of those people never taken plant medicine. So I think it's a ridiculous idea. How can you like legislate something that you don't know what you're really talking about, and you cannot understand it from a book? I'm sorry, like you can't, even if you read all the books about plant medicine, that's not the same, that having an experience. Like, do you find this is a problem, or, do you think that these 2 paths could merge and like there is a possibility of coming to a common ground?
I don't know about merging, but I think that the medical practices are going to be looking to the community to support people after big experiences, or when things go sideways, or like I feel that they are going to necessarily be equipped to support people ongoing, or understand spiritual elements. And this is kind of broad strokes, right? I mean, of course, there are practitioners that have had experiences, that have done in-depth trainings like the one you're going to be offering. That's a full year of going deep with plant medicines and the integration process. But likely, what we hear is trying to go for medicines that pack a big punch in a short amount of time, like 5-MeO DMT. Get your 1-hour session with a therapist and doctor, and then, go ahead and get an Uber home. So that to me is like just going to be leaving a lot of individuals blown open and not having the care and support needed. So in that way, I do see that the medical field is going to be looking to practitioners that have a lot of experience, that can work slower, that have groups, that have this understanding of where someone might be and how to meet them there. So I've gotten more and more interested in sort of the integration process that's more nature-based or community held. How can we activate each other in these ways to support the larger community and be responsible for each other? I feel that anybody going through a plant medicine experience like needs a buddy. whether that's a friend or a therapist, but someone who is like has a deep understanding of this and where it might take them. Because if not, there's really no one there that's going to have your back. And I hear far too often about facilitators feel that just kind of leave people hanging after a ceremony. Like that's not their job. The integration, their job is facilitating the ceremonies. And I can understand that point of view, but if there is no path to where do you send people for support and help after, then it's a big limitation and drawback for these medicines.
Yes, absolutely. And that can be a next, episode when we dive into the integration and why is that so important what you do outside of the ceremony container. But for now, just to, finish this episode, like what would you say to people who are coming into the psychedelic space and they are like, I heard about this, I'm curious, I'm excited, what do I do now? What would you love these people to know, before actually they take the medicine?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'll have to cook on that a little bit. I mean, to me, most important is the safety. Like you have to start with safety first. So understanding dosing, where substances are coming from, like the fentanyl contamination in powders and even potentially other things is a big deal. It's terrible. People can overdose and die off of just one exposure. So that aspect of dosing, purity of substance, the set and setting where you're going to take it in. So your mindset, how have you prepared to go into that? And are you in a safe place with safe people? Is there an emergency plan? Have you thought through all the different things that could come up? Have you made sure that you're not on medications or have medical conditions where you should seek professional medical advice before taking a psychedelic substance if you are on certain medications? So that would be the place to start. But then, I feel that if after you've kind of checked that box, what's the intention behind doing this? Is it just because you heard your friends say it revolutionized their life? I don't feel like that's the best reason because you read an article or someone told you how great it was for them. I think it's that like, why am I seeking this out? And what do I want to get out of it? And what, am I really clear on that purpose? And if that's the guiding principle and you can answer that question really well, then I think the experiences in the path will be more accessible and more open and more safe for individuals to pursue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we co-created a webinar for this 5 steps for responsible preparation for plant medicine journeys that you can access through the website Psychedelic Support under education and trainings or workshops, I think. So it's I think $19 or something, super affordable. And then we talk through all of these points that Alli mentioned, to make sure that you go in the right way and in a safe way, because we couldn't go into this other topic, the whole dark side of plant medicine and the misuse of the plants today so deeply, but that will be another occasion. But yeah, just these plants, these sacred plants are very powerful tools, and they can be used to harm and to heal, depending on intention, depending person who is working with these plants. So that's something I would want to put out there, because when I began my journey, I had the illusion that this is all good, this is all light, that this you cannot be harmed or nothing bad can happen because the medicine loves you and it's a benevolent kind of spirit or something like that. But that is not true, So prepare in a good way, stay safe on your journey, have plenty of support and information, and all the blessings and all the love and light, and welcome to this path. And thank you so much, Alli, for making the time today and sharing your personal story, and also sharing your vision and this beautiful platform that, for all us to use and to connect through, this platform, and to create and form this community. So yeah, with gratitude, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Nina, and thank you for all the work you're putting out there and support you're giving to others.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and guys, if you're, feeling the calling to support others, especially in the integration, check out our upcoming training. Also, it's up on Psychedelic Support on my website, avatarhealingarts.com. We are starting in April for the Ayahuasca Integration Facilitator training. So there is still a couple of places left. And thank you for listening, and leave a comment and tell us, what you think or what you want to hear about next. Thank you so much, and lots of light to you all. Thank you for listening, and leave a comment if you enjoyed this episode. Help us grow our community by sharing this episode with your friends and subscribe to our channel to receive the latest on Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy. To embark on your healing journey or to start a new career in Psychedelic Assisted Therapy, go to my website, avatarhealingarts.com, and get in touch. And of course, stay tuned for the next episode.